A Day in Otherworld by Christian Galliana, Ch.1. Part 1. The Fall of Astroph. How could a world so full of life die in a single night? The thought belonged only to Sindriel. She would never have spoken it where anyone could hear. A queen was expected to offer certainty, even when certainty had already burned to ash. From the highest tower of Astroph Castle, she watched her people flee through the city below. Families waded through the shallow canals that crossed the lower districts. Neighbors pulled one another through narrow side passages between buildings. Soldiers carried children beneath one arm while guiding the wounded with the other. Panic had taken the streets, but it had not made the people cruel. They were frightened, and still they helped one another. For a moment, pride rose through Sindriel's fear. Then guilt crushed it. She should have been down there with them. She should have been lifting fallen beams, opening the castle stores, guiding people toward the coast. Instead, she stood behind stone walls while Astroph bled beneath her. A line of black shapes moved through the distant smoke. Demons poured from the ruined main entrance and spread through the streets with no discipline she could understand. Some chased anyone who ran. Others tore through homes and places of refuge, as though destruction itself were their only command. Sindriel's hands tightened against the window ledge. If she went down now, perhaps she could still help. Perhaps the people would see her and remember that Astroph had not surrendered. 3 sharp knocks struck her chamber door. She turned. Enter! A young courier stumbled inside, breathless and streaked with soot. Blood darkened one sleeve, though the wound did not appear to be his. He clutched a rolled sheet of parchment so tightly that the paper had crumpled beneath his fingers. My queen. He bowed too quickly and nearly fell. This came from the Western Watch. Sindriel crossed the chamber and took the scroll. Where is the officer who wrote it? The courier's mouth opened, but no answer came. His eyes fixed on the floor. Tell me. 2 of them found us before he finished. The courier swallowed hard. They pulled him apart, like paper. I took the warning and ran. Sindriel looked down at the parchment. A rough map of Astroph had been drawn across it. The main entrance was marked first, then the town square and the slums. The holy cathedral remained unmarked, though a trail of smeared ink curved dangerously near it. A final line cut through the city toward the castle. At the bottom, the officer's message ended in the middle of a sentence. The castle must be evacuated. Stop. The rest of the page was streaked with blood. The courier watched her as though she might somehow turn the words into something survivable. Go, Sindriel said. Use the eastern stairs. Help anyone you find along the way. Do not return for me. His face tightened. My queen. That is an order. He bowed and fled. Sindriel returned to the window. The demons had not scattered randomly. They had struck the places where people gathered, traded, prayed, and sought shelter. They had begun with the gates and were now carving a path toward the highest tower in the kingdom. Toward her. A terrible understanding settled over her. The people of Astroph had spent years looking to the castle whenever the world grew dark. To many of them, Sindriel was not merely their queen. She was proof that the kingdom still stood. The demons had come to eat all hope. If she remained, they would tear through every person between the gates and this tower. If she escaped, perhaps they would follow. Another impact shook the castle. Dust fell from the ceiling. Somewhere below, stones split with a sound like thunder. Sindriel turned toward the far wall of her chamber. An arch had always been carved there, smooth and strangely plain, among the elaborate stonework of the tower. She had noticed it since childhood, and had never found a door, hinge, inscription, or purpose. Now, a thread of purple light appeared at its base. The light climbed the arch in both directions, tracing its shape until the entire outline glowed. The stone inside it darkened, deepening from gray to violet to a blackness that seemed to recede far beyond the wall. Sindriel stepped back. She had never seen the passage before. No servant had spoken of it. No royal record had mentioned it. The tower stood above open air. There should have been nowhere for such a corridor to go. The chamber doors buckled inward. A face appeared through the broken wood. The demon's mouth had no lips. Jagged teeth crowded its jaw in no orderly rows, some growing inward, others twisting sideways. Its smile stretched so far around its skull that Sindriel thought one more movement might split its head in two. Red fluid ran from its wounds and hissed wherever it touched the floor. The creature howled. Corrosive blood and spittle gathered in its mouth. Sindriel hesitated only once. Then she ran for the arch. The demon spat as her body crossed the threshold. A wave of red acid struck the purple light behind her. The arch rippled. The acid flattened against an invisible barrier and burst backward across the chamber. The demon screamed as its own blood sprayed over its face. Sindriel stumbled deeper into the passage, while the purple outline folded inward, sealing itself behind her. The last thing she saw was the demon's impossible smile twisting in fury. Then the wall became solid stone. Sindriel stood with one hand pressed against it, unable to breathe. The pounding continued faintly from the other side, but the passage did not open again. She forced air into her lungs and moved forward. Purple light awakened beneath each cautious step. It traveled through the floor and climbed the walls in thin branching lines before fading behind her. The corridor was wider than she expected, and impossibly still. No wind reached it. No sound followed except the whisper of her own clothing and the measured beat of her heart. After several turns, the passage widened around a towering shape. At first, Sindriel mistook it for a person standing in the dark. Then the purple light reached it. The figure had been built from broken weapons. Swords, hooked blades, narrow ritual knives, and warped lengths of metal had been fused into the rough shape of a body. It had no face. A rectangular plaque hung where its head should have been. Many of the weapons were unfamiliar to her. Some were blackened as though burned from within. Others had been bent by a force greater than any hammer. Sindriel raised the plaque toward the purple glow and read, "These weapons belong to those who reached into the dark and dragged forth what should have remained dead. I broke their blades. I broke their bodies. I denied them names, graves, and the dignity of being remembered as people. Should their kind return, I will tear the breath from their lungs, split the corruption from their flesh, and burn whatever remains until even the earth refuses their ashes. Let this monument stand as my only promise. I will show no mercy to those who make instruments of the dead." Queen Valmore Sindriel read the name twice. Valmore had taught her that mercy was not weakness. She had spoken gently, even when issuing judgment, and had carried grief without using it as permission to wound others. Nothing in the message sounded like the woman who had raised Sindriel. And yet the engraving was unmistakably hers. A faint scrape came from somewhere beyond the monument. Sindriel lowered the plaque. Another sound followed, the hurried shift of books or boxes, then a brief clatter quickly smothered. Someone was inside the passage with her. She moved without calling out. Behind the weapon figure, a narrow seam broke the stone wall. Warm candlelight shone through it. Sindriel pressed one hand to the hidden panel, and it gave way with a soft rasp. She paused at the entrance. The rummaging stopped. Sindriel waited, listening. When no one emerged, she slipped inside. The chamber beyond was large enough to occupy an impossible portion of the tower. Hundreds of candles burned in iron holders along the walls, though several had melted almost to nothing. Tall shelves leaned under the weight of journals, rolled maps, loose pages, and objects gathered from places Sindriel had never seen. A wide window overlooked the barred sea. Beyond it, Astrof burned beneath a sky of smoke. Sindriel remained near the doorway, expecting movement. None came. Then two green eyes opened beside a fallen stack of books. A black cat crouched in the narrow space behind a shelf. One paw rested on the edge of an open volume. It stared at her without making a sound. For several seconds, Sindriel could only stare back. "How did you get in here?" she whispered. The cat blinked. It seemed absurd that an ordinary animal could have entered a sealed chamber hidden inside an impossible passage. Yet the castle above them was collapsing. Demons were spitting acid at magical doors.